So I began to practice taking my shotgun and putting up under my chin. I just said, one more bad day, I'm doing it. I had made up my mind.
Unfortunately, what you just heard is a thought that way too many people have nowadays. The man that you just saw is David, and he went through hell as a child. And right at the moment when he was about to end it all, something incredible happened.
I was 14. I started having these dreams, and they would always begin in that place, Gabriel, between asleep and awake. There's this zone. I believe it's a spiritual zone where things happen. I don't know why, where visions happen, where it's like this space. I don't know, but all I know is that's how it began for me. Like I would begin to drift off to sleep, and then out of the darkness, I knew him. I knew him because I first saw him when I was 5, and I knew him in the fiber of my soul. It was that demonic force, demon. And he would lash out at me from the darkness. Like there was this space of light where I was. And he would just dip in from the darkness. And I saw that outline of his face again, those perfect pearly white conical teeth, huge. And these claws, I'll never forget him. Like they were like almost like knives, and these ginormous, like muscular arms lashing out at me. And it's hatred for me. I felt it again, and I would startle awake, and I was terrified to fall asleep. And so sleepless nights and paranoia and fear began to plague me. And then these words like, you have no hope. Look at where you live. These people don't love you. Look at all the horrible things they've done to you. You have no future. All these great thoughts you have in your mind. Oh, so you're going to be some great guy. You're going to do some great things. No, nobody like you gets to do anything great. You're going to be living just like this and worse. You might as well kill yourself. If you kill yourself, the pain will stop. Hey, if you kill yourself, then they'll know. Then they're going to know how horrible they treated you. Then they're going to be sorry. Then you're going to teach them a lesson. Day after day after day after day, they just begin to plague my mind. And I kind of at a certain age grew up learning how to shoot a shotgun and fishing and that kind of stuff. I loved being outdoors, and loved hunting, loved fishing, because especially on my own, like I had some solitude. And I used to camp out in the desert. Well, this is a different time. My mom and my stepdad would let me do it. And one Christmas, they even bought me some camping gear. They literally scraped and saved because they knew how much I enjoyed being outdoors and climbing the mountains, do all these things. And so I had the shotgun, 12-gauge shotgun, and I began to, first I started practicing jumping out of bed and loading it very quickly because my mom didn't want to load a gun in the house, because of what happened to my next closest sibling, get shot in the head and killed. And so I would, in the middle of the night, I'd jump up, or if I was startled, I'd grab it. And it happened a lot. I'd be startled out of a sound sleep with these nightmares and crazy thoughts and dreams and stuff. And so I would grab my shotgun and load it and rack it and just be ready. And I believed somebody was going to break in and kill me. I was just like, man, just horrible. And so, some would say PTSD probably from all the stuff that had happened to me and been done to me. And so as I began to hear these thoughts about killing myself, I began to believe them. I had no hope. I was never going to do anything in life. I might as well just kill myself. So I began to practice taking my shotgun and putting up under my chin. And I'll never forget the first time I did it, I pulled the trigger with my thumb, pushed it back, click. And then these words in my mind, see, just that easy. Then all this will be over. And all the thoughts again. Then they'll be sorry. Then they're going to know how badly they treated you. Then you're going to teach them a lesson, and all this pain will stop. You've got no future anyway. Just be done with it. And I practiced that a few different times. And then I finally said to myself, I don't know if it was me. I had to be demonic influence. I just said, one more bad day. One more bad thing happens to me. I have one more bad day. I'm doing it. I had made up my mind. And that was that.
And what happened after you made that decision in your mind?
It was probably the very next week or so that we got invited to this little church not too far from our where we were living. And I had this encounter. And I just will never forget, like, the guy who was up at the, up on the stage of the podium, preaching, teaching, just completely faded as I sat with this Bible. And quite honestly, I was, I did pretty well in school. I was a fairly smart kid and I was a good reader, and I could read and understand the King James Bible. And, to my mom's credit, I will say this: as a number of times over the years as a little kid, she had us in church. She would take us to church, not all the time. Of course, a lot of bad stuff in between that we were never allowed to talk about. You never talk about the bad times. That's not allowed in our family. You're right. That's how it was. Don't ever talk about anything bad. But she had us in church, and I remember hearing the gospel. I remember listening to preachers and understanding what they were saying. I believe that's something else the Lord put in me. My mom asked me, like, so what'd you think about the sermon? What do you think it meant? And I would tell her. She just looked at me like, oh my gosh. Like, no, I understand what he's saying, And so there I was. Everything faded out, Gabriel. Everything faded. And I sat with this Bible. And all these words came to life in my mind and my soul about God's love for me, and had really nothing to do. I'm trying to remember exactly how it was. I think there was a flyer, and it maybe had like, the Roman road, the gospel. And I quickly began to look them up. I was like, oh, I figured out how to look them up. I found the books, Table Contents, and I'm going to look these things up about how the Lord died for me, how he gave everything for me, and how much he loved me, and that nobody could take me out of his hand, and I'm his forever. And all that the Father gives me, I will never cast out. And I just was like, what? Like, I had never felt of value. I had never felt of worth like that. Like, what? Wait a minute. He gave everything for me. He gave everything for me. He rose again. Has he been with me all this time? Has he been looking out for me? And the words just came to life.